Today our guest on Let's Talk Jonesboro is Mark Nichols. He's our street engineer or engineer of traffic engineer.
That'll work.
Right? That'll Well, Mark, we've got a lot going on in the city. You've got a lot going on, and your department has a lot going on, and we want to cover some of those things. And some of these things we've been talking about for a while, but the process is very complicated, and people say the wheels turn slow when we talk about changes to streets and traffic. Can you explain some of the process? Give an example. What's let's say the intersection of Highland, Main, Southwest Drive, that intersection is one that we've been talking about for quite a while. Tell us what is involved in making the changes there.
You bet. Well, that's a busy intersection. There's about 25 or 30,000 vehicles a day that travel through that intersection. And so the first step is really identifying that you have a problem. That's usually pretty evident, right? But then you have to make that case to the appropriate people. And so in that case, it's on a state highway. And so we brought that to RDOT's attention. And so they really have to concur that, yes, that's a legitimate issue. There's a safety concerns there. There's some capacity concerns there. And so once they agree, then it's really a matter of funding. And so that's really the most difficult part, because there's problems everywhere and we all acknowledge that they're there. And we kind of could even have some idea maybe how to fix them. Maybe additional lane here, or hey, a turn lane would really help there. And so once you identify the problem, and so we look for funding, and we were fortunate to have Commissioner Mr. Farmer on the Highway Commission, and so we also partnered with RDOT on that project, which helps a lot as well. So once funding is secured, then you start the design process, and that can take as long as 12 months to 18 months. A project like that, it's been around 12 to 18 months to finish that. Even though it's a small project, there's a lot of research that has to go into the drainage system. You had to do, cores of, hey, what are you dealing with as far as soils? If you widen over here and you go down, 3 feet, what are you going to encounter? Is there a lot of, old vegetation that was buried there a while back? So you have to do all that research on the front end, and then do the design. And once you have the design around 60%, you can start buying right-of-way. So at 60%, you really have the right-of-way boundaries established. And once those are established, you know that, hey, we need 300 square feet from this parcel, and we need 800 square feet from this parcel. And so you start acquiring that, and then there's long discussions that get involved with that too, because you're impacting people along that
Right.
project. There's driveways are being maybe impacted. People don't have as much grass anymore on their frontage, and so there's all kinds of different situations. Sometimes visibility. If you have any kind of vertical MSC walls, as we have on some projects, the vertical concrete walls for the overpasses, where before the person had a view of the highway, now their view is a 12-foot wall. And so how do you compensate that business for that? It really gets complicated, and lawyers can sometimes get involved. And so that is a time-consuming part of the process. And once the right-of-way is secured, which can take a year to 18 months as well on a project, depends on how many parcels. That particular project, there's 8 parcels involved. So possibly 8 different property owners. One may live in California. One may have maybe a trust with 8 family members involved, and so you can see how complicated that can get. And then there's moving utilities, and so
Moving utilities is a whole new ballgame in itself, right?
It's a totally different animal. Now you're dealing with which we try to do we stake out the existing utilities right when we start the design, so we know if we need to avoid a certain area. So if there's a 1,200 pair fiber optic cable on this side of the road, and it may be more cost efficient to avoid that versus have to pay to move that, which may be $1 million or more. So there's that kind of coordination that goes on the front end, and so once we get into the right-of-way movement, that can be a year-long process as well to get everything out of the way. And some complications there is, sometimes they can't be moved until the peak hours subside. So if you have a high voltage power line that feeds a large section of town, then you have to move that, and during certain months of the year is you have a window to move that. And so that's just some of the things that have to be done before the project is let to construction. So yeah, like you said, there's a lot of history that goes in to these projects before the public really sees any activity on the ground. A lot of times there's been years of work.
You know, you're making me think of a line from a Steinbeck novel where a bum just looks at a scientist and says, "Why don't you just give up?"
Yeah, exactly.
You ever feel like giving up?
Well, sometimes it can be discouraging. You just keep keep pushing forward. But we do have some wins under our belt. I feel like we have a lot of good things going, and that is encouraging. And you can see the process moving along. Yes, it can be discouraging sometimes, but you just have to attack whatever is holding up the project and try to find a resolution to that. And that's what we do. And sometimes things go smoothly, but sometimes you have those issues rise.
Well, let's talk about that intersection first. That's the one you've got businesses on 3 corners and Jonesboro High School on the 4th. Is that right?
Well, there's businesses on all 4.
All 4
because there's
corners?
the bank on the high school.
Oh, the bank before, that's right, before the high school. So where do we stand on that right now?
Well, we have 4 of 8 parcels appraised, and they're acquiring those as they do the appraisals. And so we're halfway there on right-of-way acquisition. They just took down the McDonald's sign, and that was in conflict with when we had to move the utilities there. So we just got the McDonald's sign removed. And so the next step
that was a high sign too. That was not a
it was high.
small.
Yeah, I believe it was 80 foot tall, and yeah. So that was an obstacle in itself, and so we're getting started to move utilities once we get all the right of way acquired, and we have a narrow window. This is one of those jobs that power line can only be moved during the off peak times, and so we have a narrow window this winter to move that.
That's a great example. All right. What else we need to talk about? The overpass on Highway 18?
That's the project that's been let to construction and is furthest along. You remember we got a Tiger grant back in 2012 for this project, and so they're started construction. They started this last fall, and they're driving pilings for the Watt Street overpass and putting in drainage on Kane Street, and they've already widened parts of Nettleton Avenue. And so I think in the next few months we're going to see a lot of progress on that project, especially next year. The bulk of the Watt Street overpass should be complete. So we're going to have another way to get over the tracks, and then the following season we'll see the Highway 18 overpass move along. And that was a $25 million project, just construction, and right away and utilities was additional funds.
Wow!
And so the sheer cost of these projects make them almost impossible to get all that funding secured and move forward.
And securing that funding, this was where we got close to $90 million for a 10% contribution, correct?
Right. We contributed $7.81 million to get $90 million worth of work, which is a great investment for the citizens of Jonesboro, and we're thankful for that. And so we're going to see a lot of improvements because of that partnership.
We're thankful to our grant writers, to our engineers, and to the state and everyone else, because this is going to alleviate one of the biggest problems for traffic in Jonesboro, waiting on trains.
Absolutely. There's 34 trains a day that cross there, and as you know, many times they actually block the crossing. And so, the hazard rating was high for that crossing. The accidents were high as far as trains versus cars, and so it was a critical step. But it's also a huge step in the big picture of transportation for the city. When Commerce Drive on the east side gets completed, that's going to allow people to come into the heart of the city and avoid a lot of other traffic. And so the small picture is that was a terrible situation in that particular crossing, but the big picture, it helps our overall system.
Very good. We also have plans at Caraway and Highland, and I think people are going to be seeing the labor. The labor is going to be visible pretty
That's right.
soon,
That,
correct?
that project lets November 6th, so that's this next month.
Okay.
Lets to construction, and estimates have been around $3 to $4 million for that project. We'll see where it comes in at. It'll probably take around 18 months to complete.
What's going to happen?
Well, we're going to widen each leg of the roadway. Is going to be widened. We're going to add a dual left turns and a right turn lane on each leg, and so we're actually adding 2 lanes on each leg of the intersection. We're adding pedestrian crossings as well. There's around 35 to 40,000 people that go through the intersection every day, and we're going to reduce the delay through it by 20+%. So we're excited about that.
That is good. Harrisburg Road and Parker.
Right. That's widening from Parker on Harrisburg Road to Forest Hill, and we're around 60% on that project. There's we've had some delays with. We had a public forum which we got a lot of good information from, and we had to include a traffic signal at the Forest Hill location intersection, and so we had to change order that into the project. So that took a little bit of time, but we're moved forward. We're full steam ahead now, and we're at around 60% plans. There's a lot of parcels involved on that project, a lot of utilities. Even though it's a short project, it's pretty complicated. And we're going to have a bike trail on the south, on the west side of that project. The road kind of runs diagonally, so it's always hard to know whether it's the south or west. But on the
Yeah.
Walmart side
Right.
of the project, we're going to have a multi-use trail going down to Forest Hill, and so that'll connect in with our future bike plan.
Right.
And so we're trying to accommodate bicyclists along the roadway, and so it's going to be a good project. Right now, traffic on Harrisburg Road, when you come over the overpass, it's just one lane that continues south. And so this will allow 2 lanes to continue south and really help that afternoon peak hour traffic that backs up through the ramp
Right.
intersection and all the way across the bridge.
Across the bridge.
And
yeah.
so it should help. We get a lot of complaints with the ramp there, the eastbound off ramp.
Yes.
And so this
I would
should
think
help.
the westbound one too.
Well, the
Probably
westbound
good.
one has a traffic signal,
Okay.
which it does block it at times, but the eastbound one is blocked, frequently throughout the day. And we're trying to. That's one of our priority projects for the future, is to do something different with that interchange. We're trying to secure funding for that. It's on the MPO's short list, if you will, and it's a priority for the city. It's just going to be expensive to redo that interchange.
And the point that I think of when you talk about all these things is that other cities have these problems too, and they're competing for grant dollars because they don't have the sales tax revenue to make this happen, these type of projects, and you have to have state help, you have to have assistance wherever you can find it. And we're doing a good job, as far as I'm concerned, having lived in and visited other cities. Jonesboro is doing a really good job. That's probably a compliment to you, but I don't want to say that out loud.
Well, it's a team effort. The grants department has done a great job, securing some funding for us in that level. The mayor's done a good job at building relationships with the right people, and he goes down to Little Rock every month and visits with the highway department, and I think that makes a big difference. And so it's really multifaceted, but I agree. I think with the funding that we have, we're really efficient with it, and we try to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And so I think we're doing good with what we had to work with.
Mark, what other things do people need to know about? I mean, people don't think about it when the lights line up. They only think about it when they have to stop. And so that's a tough position. And in government, sometimes that's just the way, that's how it can be. It's not always thankful. But
Right.
what problems are you addressing right now? What other issues?
Well, our traffic signals are always a constant battle to maintain those and to keep them operating as efficiently as they're designed to. We have sensors all throughout the city. Have over 1,000 different sensors and detection cameras throughout the city that we maintain. And so if one of those goes bad, then that causes a lot of delay for the traffic. That you stop and there's no one on the side street and you're sitting there waiting and there's no other cars around. So we're actively trying to keep everything 100% as far as detection. And our traffic management center has helped us in this way. It allows us to remotely view the detection and do diagnostics quickly versus going to the intersection and watching it or looking at the screen. We can, from our desk, access every intersection in the city and look at its health, if you will, of its detectors. And if we have a fault or we have an issue, a technician can go out and fix that or put it on the list of things. Hey, next week we're going to replace that camera, or we're going to get the contractor in and replace that loop. And so it's a constant battle to maintain what we have. And then there's also efforts to move forward and further improve efficiency, change the timing of the corridor, and that involves getting counts, getting accurate, up-to-date data along the corridor, and modeling that, and then retiming the lights accordingly. And so, so these volumes over the course of really 5 years can change dramatically.
I bet that's right.
And
Yes.
especially if there's new businesses in the area. And so we try to update that as frequently as we can.
You adjust the timing as you see necessary, and you're doing that with actual data, not anecdotal evidence. Man, I had a long time at this light. You're
Right.
using real science, right?
Correct. Yeah, we collect the data and we put it in a model and try to pick the most efficient thing and most efficient timing for the entire corridor. There's a balance between traffic flow, because you could make the major street get green lights, and stay a really long time, but your minor street is going to suffer, right, if they have to wait a long time. So there's a real balance between the cycle length of the lights, of actually letting traffic flow along the corridor, and your side street not waiting for excessive amounts of time. And so trying to find that exact number that's best for each intersection, because they're all connected and they all have to be the same cycle length. The cycle length is, if you were to put a timer on a signal and it would go operate all the phases, that's its cycle length. And industry standard, you try not to, there's some communities that have 160-second cycle lengths. We don't go, our highest is 116. And so we made efforts to reduce that. In the past years, we reduced it. It was 84 for downtown, and we reduced it down to 64, so our pedestrians wouldn't have to wait as long. But there's also, whenever you reduce that, it's harder to put all the cars through the system, if you will, from one end to the other. So there's a difficult balance of safety, of traffic flow, and then also just driver frustration and trying to minimize that.
Right, right. Well, you do a great job. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us on Let's Talk Jonesboro.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it.